So the next thing that scientists observed, remember we've got Einstein and Planck giving us this idea that light can be both a wave and a particle. The next thing that scientists observed was the hydrogen line emission spectrum. So scientists passed a current through a tube containing hydrogen gas and a glow was emitted. And they passed this glow through a prism. And if you pass sunlight through a prism, you get the full rainbow. You see all red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. When they passed this glow from the hydrogen gas through a prism, they didn't get the full rainbow. They got specific frequencies of light. They got a purple band, a blue band, this kind of turquoisey band, and like a reddish band. So the light was separated into its specific frequencies, and this pattern of light bands is called a line emission spectrum because you have lines of light that are emitted. Lines of light that are emitted make the line emission spectrum. You can do this for any element. Each element has its own characteristic line emission spectrum, kind of like a fingerprint. So this is actually how we know the chemical composition of stars that are super far away. We look at the light emitted from the stars and we can shine that light, pass that light through a prism and look at the wavelengths of light that are emitted and know what elements are inside the star. So, scientists noted that hydrogen atoms are emitting only specific frequencies of light, not the full rainbow, not like sunlight. And they wondered why this was, but related to the mathematical models of wavelength and frequency and how energy is related to the frequency of light, they determined that the hydrogen atom must only be able to exist in very specific energy states, and each energy corresponds to that particular wavelength of light. So, Niels Bohr was the person who put these ideas together. He used math to propose an atomic model that explained the hydrogen line emission spectrum. He said that electrons exist only in quantized energy levels. So here we're talking about quanta again, where you have these specific levels. You can be on this stair or this stair. You can't hover halfway in between. His idea was that an electron could be here or here. It could not hang out halfway between these orbits. So the electron can exist only in quantized energy levels or orbits around the nucleus. And he said that an electron has more energy when it's in a higher energy level, a higher orbit that's further from the nucleus. So this electron that I've drawn here has higher energy than this electron here. Lower energy. So Bohr's planetary model looks like planets orbiting the sun. The sun is like the nucleus at the center of the model, and then the planets, or the electrons, orbit the nucleus. You do need to know about Bohr's model of the atom, so please add that to your notes. Bohr found a link between the position of a hydrogen electron and the emission of photons. So he mathematically calculated the quantities of energy that an electron could absorb or release as it moves between the different energy levels in his hydrogen atom model. So if an electron absorbs energy, it goes this way, and if an electron is releasing energy, it goes towards the nucleus. He found that the wavelengths of light that are observed in the line emission spectrum from hydrogen precisely corresponded to his calculated values. This higher energy transition corresponds to this purple wavelength of light, and this low energy wavelength corresponds to this red wavelength of light. His calculated values exactly agree with the line emission spectrum for hydrogen. So Bohr is really linking together this quantum theory proposed by Planck and kind of modified by Einstein to the atomic model. He's relating wavelengths of light to the energy released by electrons. So let's look at these electron transitions. When we talk about electron transitions, we need to have a couple definitions first. First, you need to know what the ground state is. The ground state is the lowest energy state of an atom. It's when all electrons are in the lowest energy orbitals possible. So hydrogen only has one electron, so its lowest energy state would be for that one electron to be here in the first energy level. The excited state is when one or more electrons in the atom have moved to higher energy orbitals than what you would have in the ground state. So if this electron leaves the first energy level and goes to the second, that would count as an excited state. But the electron doesn't have to go to the second energy level. It could be in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth energy levels. It takes energy to move from the ground state to the excited state. So you have to put energy into the system to move an electron from the ground state to the excited state. To move from the excited state back down to the ground state, the electron has to emit energy, has to release energy. And when the electron does that, when it releases that energy in the form of light. Sometimes it's light we can see, sometimes it's light we can't see. Over here, in fact, I've got some transitions that the hydrogen atom can do that emit light that we cannot see. But these wavelengths, these energies of light are produce wavelengths that we can see. Okay, so to summarize, an electron can move to a higher energy orbit by absorbing a photon with enough energy. You can move an electron from here to here if the electron absorbs enough energy. On the other hand, an electron can move from a higher energy level to a lower energy level, so long as there's space available, by emitting a photon with the correct amount of energy. The energy absorbed or emitted must be equal to the energy difference between the initial and final orbits. Okay? If the electron is moving from here to here, it's releasing a specific amount of energy that corresponds to the difference in those energy levels. It can't emit more and it can't emit less. Same thing with absorbing energy. So, Bohr's model proposed stable orbits for electrons. It explained Rutherford's model better. He explained Rutherford's model better because he gave a reason for those electrons to stay in orbit. Unfortunately, Bohr's model was beautiful. It worked beautifully for the hydrogen atom, but it only worked for atoms and ions with just one electron. His model broke down for all other elements on the periodic table. His model did not work anymore. So Bohr's model, while it was amazingly helpful and moved us towards a better understanding of the atom, it wasn't perfect. And so more scientists had to do more research to find out what was going on.